Some child stars capture our hearts forever, whether through unforgettable roles or the challenges they faced beyond the spotlight. From Bridgette Andersen, the beloved Savannah Smiles star who tragically died at 21 from a heroin overdose, to Benji Gregory, Todd Bridges, Tatum O'Neal, Leif Garrett, and Bonaduce, each with their own unique journeys through fame, struggle, and survival. Their stories remind us that behind the glitz and glamour, childhood stardom can come with heavy costs. Which of their stories resonates with you most? Share your thoughts below. Like to honor their journeys? Subscribe for more real stories from Hollywood's hidden past. News 1. Danny's Box. Most people remember Danny Bonaduce as the wisecracking redhead from the Partridge Family. Fewer know the man behind the spotlight, the addict, the fighter, the guy who once lived out of his car with a face still recognized by millions. But there's one story almost no one knows. It lives in a box, and it begins at a half-empty convention center in Sacramento in 1996. Danny was broke in more ways than one, signing faded photos of a life that no longer fit. Fans came and went in waves. A few remembered his name. Fewer still remembered to look him in the eye. Until her. She was young, quiet, wearing sleeves too long for the heat. She handed him a glossy to sign, but instead of saying her name, she placed a sealed envelope in front of him. "This was supposed to be goodbye," she said, and walked away. He opened it only after the crowd thinned. It wasn't a letter. It was a suicide note. She'd planned to end her life the night before, but something stopped her. Watching old reruns of the Partridge Family, she saw herself in the chaos, lost, ignored, but still there. She decided to hold out one more day. Then she stood in line to meet a childhood ghost. What changed her mind? He said something to her, something stupid probably. A throwaway line. "I'm glad you're here." But those 4 words cracked the silence in her head. Danny never told anyone. Not producers, not radio hosts, not even his therapist. He just folded the letter, slid it into a wooden box with some old backstage passes and the one thing he never expected to find in Hollywood again: meaning. And sometimes when he feels like none of it counted, he opens the box. He still doesn't know her name. He doesn't need to, because someone out there is still alive because Danny Bonaduce showed up that day. News 2. The album no one heard, Leif Garrett's ghost record. You know Leif Garrett as the golden-haired teen idol from the 70s, the poster on the bedroom wall, the voice behind "I Was Made for Dancin'." But there's something you don't know, something that never made it to the stage, or the charts, or the tabloids. He recorded an entire album in 1992. Not glam, not pop, just Leif raw, acoustic, clean for the first time in years. He called it Grey Dawn. 11 songs. No auto-tune. Just a guitar, some scratch vocals, and lyrics about being used, discarded, and forgotten. The industry didn't want it. Too real, one executive said. Too depressing, said another. One actually told him, "This isn't what people want from you. They want the memory, not the man." So Leif shelved it. No press, no leaks, no bootlegs. Only a few friends ever heard it, people in recovery, people like him, who knew what it meant to have a spotlight but live in the shadows. One track stood out. It was called Room 214. No chorus, just a haunting confessional about waking up in a motel room surrounded by bottles and people who didn't know your name. Here's the twist. The master tapes still exist, locked in a case in a friend's home in Laurel Canyon. Dusty, never digitized. A time capsule of a man trying to claw his way out of the caricature the world had made of him. Leif once said in a private interview, "That's the only album where I wasn't trying to be someone. It's the first time I ever just was." What's stopping him from releasing it now? Maybe nothing. Maybe fear. Maybe it was never meant to be heard by the world, just by the version of himself that needed to record it. So next time someone says Leif Garrett was just another fallen idol, remember this. Somewhere in LA, there's a lost album that tells the truth, and only a handful of people will ever know how good it really was. 3. The note her father left, Tatum O'Neal's hidden scene. Tatum O'Neal was just 10 when she became the youngest person ever to win an Academy Award for Paper Moon. The world saw brilliance. Headlines praised her as a prodigy. But behind the camera, things were messier and more fragile than anyone knew. Especially between her and her father, Ryan O'Neal. Their relationship was a storm, public, painful, and often misunderstood. But there's one moment no one talks about. One moment buried in the footnotes of film history. During the final week of shooting Paper Moon, Tatum had a scene she dreaded. A quiet, emotional take where her character Addie was meant to let her guard down. But she couldn't get there. She was tired, overwhelmed. The pressure was eating her from the inside out. The director was frustrated, the crew whispered. That's when someone found her trailer door slightly ajar. On the makeup counter sat a folded piece of paper, just a scrap, no envelope. In Ryan's unmistakable handwriting it read, "I'm proud of you no matter what happens. This is already your movie." There was no signature, no explanation, he never mentioned it. She never told anyone. But after reading it, she nailed the scene in one take. Years later, during an interview about their famously complicated relationship, someone asked her what moment with her father she'd never forget. She paused, smiled slightly, then said, "I got a note once. It said exactly what I needed to hear, without trying too hard to say it." She didn't elaborate. She didn't need to. That note still exists, kept between the pages of her worn Paper Moon script, which she stores in a locked trunk in her New York apartment. It wasn't forgiveness, it wasn't healing, but it was a start. And sometimes all a child needs from a parent is to be seen, even once, for who they really are, not who they're supposed to be. News 4. The House with No Name. Todd Bridges' silent redemption. To the world, Todd Bridges was Willis Jackson, the older brother on Different Strokes, the one who said, "What you talking about?" just as often as Gary Coleman did. But off-screen, life was never a sitcom. Addiction, arrests, courtrooms, rehab. By the early 2000s, most people had written him off as another Hollywood cautionary tale. But there's something Todd never made public, something that didn't make headlines or reality shows. In 2011, under a false name and with no press, Todd quietly bought a small house in Riverside County, California. A plain, two-bedroom place with peeling paint and a broken porch light. But this house wasn't for him. It was for people like him, men and women coming out of prison, off the streets or out of rehab. No cameras, no programs. Just a safe bed, a stocked fridge, and someone who understood the weight of being counted out. He never called it a shelter, never gave it a name, he just called it the house. When asked why he did it, Todd told one resident, "Because someone gave me a room once, and didn't ask for anything but that I try again." No nonprofits are tied to it, no celebrity foundations. The mortgage came from his own savings. Most of his fans don't even know it exists, and he prefers it that way. Over the years, more than 40 people have passed through that door. One became a nurse, another started a landscaping company, a few relapsed, and he helped them again. The only rule? No press, no pity, no pretending. "I didn't want to be a role model," Todd once said quietly. "I just wanted to make sure someone else made it to the other side." The house is still there. No sign, no plaque, just a front light that always stays on no matter what. Because Todd Bridges knows what it feels like to walk in the dark, and what it means when someone leaves a light on, just in case you find your way back. News 5. The Last Letter. Bridgette Andersen's quiet goodbye. She lit up the screen in Savannah Smiles, a golden-haired, precocious 6-year-old who felt like she was born for the camera. Critics called her a natural. Audiences adored her. But behind those big eyes was a child, trying hard to hold herself together in a world that didn't know how to protect her. Bridgette Andersen's story didn't end in a Hollywood mansion. It ended in a tiny room in Los Angeles in 1997 from a heroin overdose. She was 21. Most people remember her as a child star who vanished too soon. What they don't know is what she left behind. After her death, while her mother was going through her things, she found a small weathered notebook wrapped in a purple ribbon. Inside was a single letter written, not to a person, but to the little girl Bridgette used to be. It began, "To Savannah. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you, but you made people smile. You mattered. That's something." The letter went on for 3 pages. It wasn't angry. It wasn't even particularly sad. It was honest. A goodbye not to life, but to the version of herself that had once believed the world was full of magic. She signed it. Bridgette, age 6, the real me. Only a few people have ever seen the letter. Her family never released it. They didn't want her legacy to be just about how she died, but rather about how deeply she felt, even as a child. Years later, a crew member from Savannah Smiles left a copy of the film's shooting script inside her burial vault. Tucked inside was a note. "You weren't acting. You were just being yourself, and that was enough." Bridgette Andersen didn't just play a lost child looking for love. She was that child. But for one brief, unforgettable moment, she showed millions of people what innocence, humor, and heartbreak looked like without even trying. And that quietly is how she said goodbye. New 6, Benji Gregory's silent stand turning down Alf. Benji Gregory was the innocent face of Alf, the popular 80s sitcom where a wisecracking alien named Alf took center stage in a suburban home. He played Brian Tanner, the wide-eyed, lovable young boy who formed an unlikely friendship with the extraterrestrial guest. To fans, Benji was the quintessential child star, but what they didn't know was the hidden struggle behind the camera. By the late 2000s, ALF was being talked about for a major reboot. Hollywood wanted to recapture the magic, and fans starved for nostalgia were hungry for anything that would bring back their favorite characters. It would have been a golden opportunity for Benji, who was in his mid-30s at the time, to relive the fame and financial success he once knew. But Benji did something unexpected. He turned it down. At the time, no one knew the full story. The media cited scheduling conflicts and a desire to pursue other projects as reasons for his refusal. What they didn't know was the deeper truth he confided only to close friends. He didn't want to return to a role that no longer felt authentic. In a private conversation years later, Benji revealed, "It was hard enough growing up in front of the camera. ALF was scripted, but my childhood felt even more scripted than the show. I don't want to exploit a past that wasn't even really mine to begin with." Benji's decision to walk away wasn't just about fame or nostalgia. It was about reclaiming a part of himself that had been lost. The experience of growing up as a child star had already taken its toll. Returning to ALF would have felt like selling a version of himself that didn't exist anymore. He never went public with this reason. In fact, very few people outside his close circle ever knew the truth behind that choice. But to those who understood, it was a silent act of reclaiming his own life. These child stars lived lives full of promise but also pain, reminding us how fragile fame can be at such a young age. By remembering their stories, we honor not just their talent but their struggles and strength. Thank you for joining us in this tribute. Leave a comment to share your memories or thoughts. Don't forget to like if you found this meaningful, and subscribe to stay connected with more heartfelt stories from Hollywood's past. Stay kind, stay aware, and never forget the faces behind the fame.